Hello, everybody. We had to get Carson on Google Hangout. We did this a few months back, and she just needed a little refresher. So apologies there. It takes a village, is what we were saying. Well, I just want to start off for thanking everybody for logging on and sharing a little bit of your time with local Lavo Charlotte. We believe it truly is time well spent on yourselves and your career. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Caitlin Sellers. I'm the local Labo Charlotte leader, and I'm the Chief of Staff and Sales for Mouse and Man. We're a digital marketing firm based here in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm working to keep my busy in check. Carson would probably tell you that I'm in recovery from busyness as usual, which is something that she talks about a lot in her practice. We're excited to start the conversation with Carson Tate. But first, I want to thank Lavo League for coordinating with us at every single level. There are a lot of women behind the scenes making events like this happen all across the country, and we've got a handful of them joining us tonight, so thank you for being here. I'd like to introduce our Lavo panelists, Cassie Hutaff, my partner in crime in Charlotte, North Carolina. We also have Sarah Mahmoud joining us from Detroit. We have Jacqueline Twilley, who is live in Atlanta, and we have Caroline Gray, who is in New York. She's our local Lavo coordinator who is joining us. Thank you for bringing us all together and keeping our vision alive. So if you'll just say which one you are, that would be helpful.
I'm Caroline from Lavo. It's lovely to see everybody here, and I hope you guys have a wonderful evening on Google Hangout with us.
For those of you watching, feel free to follow along with us on Twitter and Instagram during the conversation. You can follow me at Katie Sellers, CAITESELLERS, or the Carson Tate at the Carson Tate on Twitter. You can also search or use your city's local hashtag. Ours is local Lavo CLT, or you could use hashtag local Lavo ATL for Atlanta. You could use a commonly used Lavo hashtag, Lavo Love, and Carson's hashtag for this event and for her book that just launched, Work Simply, Live Fully. With social media out of the way, let me introduce our wonderful guest speaker tonight, author and productivity expert Carson Tate. She's joining us fresh off her latest book release, Work Simply. Carson is founder and principal of the management consulting agency Working Simply. She works with businesses and professionals to improve efficiency and organization in their work and daily lives. Hey, Carson. How are you?
I'm great. How are you? Hey, everybody. It's great to be here. Thanks for your time.
Oh, sorry about the train. We have a train like a block down the street from here, so apologies if you hear one of those in the background. I'll turn it over to Carson, and she can kind of jump into this conversation about time management for the career-driven woman.
Great, thanks. So I thought I'd kick it off tonight with the concept of the myth of time management. And spoiler alert here, I'm going to try to rock your world a little bit, because I don't believe that time management works, and I don't think that time management training actually does anything to help us be more productive. So within weeks of starting my first job out of undergrad, I was working at a bank, and I was there about 6 weeks, and they sent me to the in-house time management training. So you can imagine that I was beyond excited about this. I've always loved this stuff. So I dutifully go to the class, and the class is taught by a world-renowned productivity consulting company, and I get my planner that's given to me, and then I follow the instructions over the next couple of weeks and dutifully use my planner to try to plan my task, prioritizing using 1As, 1Bs, rewriting tasks. But what I noticed is that nothing really changed. I was still feeling busy, I was still feeling overwhelmed, and I'd gone to this class, I had this planner, and when I looked around at my colleagues, they were still feeling overwhelmed too, and nothing had changed for them. Time management training doesn't work because it's focused on this concept that our poor allocation of time is what really is contributing to our busyness. And I just don't think that's the case. We're busy, we're overwhelmed because of the complexity of our work environments, technology, we're connected 24/7. The pace at which we work, time management training isn't going to change any of that. And so if you're willing to go with me here and that time management training doesn't work, then we need a new approach. And the approach that I think we need to embrace is something I call personalized productivity. Because ultimately, what impacts our productivity is our work strategies. And your work strategies are the way you allocate your time and effort across goals, how you plan to complete your work. And our work strategies are unique. And they're actually discernible characteristics in our work strategies that directly tie back our cognitive style or the way we think and process information. So we're all unique individuals and we all think differently. Our work strategies are different. So why would we choose to use a one-size-fits-all approach to overcome our busyness? I don't think we should, and I don't think that that's ultimately what works. So I'm advocating that you get personal, and it's time to personalize your productivity and align your work strategies to the way you think and the way you process information so that it's like putting on your favorite pair of shorts. They fit perfectly every time versus trying to put on a pair that's too big or too small. That's what happens when we try to use time management training programs or apps that aren't in alignment with the way we think and process information.
So I have a question. How do we break the habit of being busy when everyone in the office is talking about busy and we don't want to come off as being lazy or not working as hard?
Jacqueline, that's a great question because busyness has become the standard response. You ask, how are you? And the response is, I'm so busy, right? I mean, that's kind of the cultural norm. And
Right.
as you're advancing in your career, to your point, you do not want to appear like lazy or that you're not focused or have enough work to do. And busyness has become, I think, a badge of honor. I'm so busy, I'm needed, I'm valued, I'm important. So what would be a better way of answering the question, and helping folks understand what you're doing? I would say something along the lines of, if they ask me, how are you? I'm doing great. I'm working on a really interesting project right now. And then maybe describe that project. Because what that does is that it shows to whomever you're talking what you're focused and what you're interested in. And it derails them from this spinning wheel of you're just so busy. Good question.
I love that one. So I have another question. So similar to what we just talked about, like busyness has become a synonym for productivity, but they're not the same. So how can we shift the conversation away from busy and distinguish between the two?
So I think about the analogy of being busy as like running on a treadmill. And when you're running on a treadmill, where are you going? Well, you're going nowhere. And being busy is that endless cycle of you're just running fast and furious, but you're not getting anywhere. It's not moving you forward. So productivity for me is about work and time that's aligned to a broader goal, a broad strategic goal. So if I want to talk about productivity, then I'm back to that conversation of talking about specific projects, my specific goals, and not just broadly saying, oh, I'm so busy, our office is so busy. No, our office is working on this project. I'm leading this project. I have an idea for this project. So you get very specific and I would say strategic so that you aren't just in that spiral of going nowhere, talking about being busy. That answer your question? Good. So we're, I think, consumed, these are great questions, and we were consumed by this busyness epidemic, and no one's immune. And one of the issues is that it is considered this cultural badge of honor, and that if you're not busy, then you're not obviously valued. And it's time to reframe the conversation in the ways that we've kind of talked about it by shifting from this blanket, I'm so busy, to being very specific about what you're working on and how you're adding value. Ultimately, that's what it's about in moving ahead in your career. And so to move beyond busy personally And what you can do to be more productive is all about personalizing your productivity. And that's where I have an assessment, the productivity style assessment, that helps you identify your productivity style. And remember, this style is aligned to the way you think and process information. And so once you know your productivity style, then it helps you discern and make choices around what's the best app for you, what's the best time management strategy for you, what's the best way to maintain your to-do list, and what's the best way to work with and communicate with your colleagues. And the beauty of personalizing your productivity is not only is it help you filter out the stuff that's not going to work so you don't waste your time and energy getting frustrated with things that aren't going to work, but it also allows you to lean into and leverage your strengths, which is really, really important. So in your career, as you're growing and advancing in your career, it's your opportunity to demonstrate where you shine. And your productivity style is the place for you to do that. And each style has amazing strengths that contribute to an organization in really powerful ways. And so there are 4 different productivity styles. There's the prioritizer, the planner, the arranger, and the visualizer. And the prioritizer's thinking is characterized as being very analytical, very linear, very fact-based. The prioritizer is the person that they just want the facts. They're not interested in your weekend. They're not interested in your dog. They just want the data. So if this is your style, your unique contribution on the team is presenting accurate facts, very succinct, logical arguments. This is invaluable. But then also recognizing that you might have a colleague like the arranger, and the arranger's thinking is characterized as being very intuitive, they're communicative, they're kinesthetic, they work best with and through people, they're highly visual. The arranger is going to want to talk about their weekend, and they want to take you to lunch, they want to learn more about you. And so as you, the prioritizer, providing the data and the facts and the analytics, your arranger colleague leaning into their strengths, they're providing the understanding of the team players. They have this intuitive sense of knowing what the needs are in the group, and they lead the group really well. So together you're a really powerful team. Individually you're powerful. Or maybe you're a planner, one of the 3rd styles, and the planner's thinking is characterized as being very organized and sequential and planned. They love organizational tools. The trip to the Container Store, Office Depot is pure bliss for these guys. And if that's your style, the strength of the planner is that they're the best at the project plans. They're the ones that you want putting together the project plans. They're the ones that you want proofing and editing your PowerPoint. So if that's your style, you lean into that in your career and look for opportunities to really showcase that. And if you're working with the prioritizer, you're helping them organize their data. If you're working with the arranger, you're helping them organize their thoughts so they can communicate more effectively. Or maybe you have a colleague who's the 4th style, who's a visualizer, or maybe that's you. And your thinking is characterized as being very big picture, intuitive, holistic, integrating. You see connections where no one else does. You're the ideator, the innovator on your team. You're taking risk, highly visual as well, great at getting a lot of different work done. And what you bring to the team and your strength to lean into in your career is ideation, those new ideas, those innovative concepts, and always challenging your colleagues to ask why not? So each of the 4 styles, prioritizer, planner, arranger, and visualizer, has these really unique characteristics that enable you personally to be more productive, but also to contribute in a really significant way to your organization. And I believe really strongly in understanding and knowing your style early in your career, so you're consistently playing to your strengths and honing those strengths and demonstrating them in the organization. So I think I have a few questions on the personalized productivity part as well.
Sure. So when you figure out what our priorities are, so how public should you be with your goals and your priorities and your style?
Mm-hmm. So I'm a Caroline, a very strong advocate in having an accountability partner. There is tremendous research out there that shows that habits, informing habits, it helps to have someone publicly know what you've committed to doing. And so I would suggest that you publicize your goals. Maybe you tell your mentor. Maybe you tell one of your colleagues at work, a close colleague. Maybe you share this with your friends in the LAVO League. Tell folks so that they can not only support you, but they can also help hold you accountable. I think it's really important.
That's a really great point there, Carson. I have to have an accountability partner when it comes to our annual negotiation workshops. We have everybody partner up and tell everybody what we're searching for and what our goals are and what the benchmarks are, and the person that we talk to at that event is supposed to hold us accountable a month later, 3 months later, 6 months later, a year later. So I think that's a really great point to make. I also had a question about daily planning.
Yeah.
I sometimes get caught in this email funk, and I can't figure out when to turn it off. It takes up my whole day sometimes. So I just didn't know if you had any suggestions about the best way to start my day when it comes to email.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to be a heretic here as well. I do not believe in starting your day with email because your inbox is nothing more than everyone else's agenda. So what your inbox represents really are the priorities and the goals and the objectives of everyone else but you. And so I suggest, and this is hard, this is really hard to do, I suggest even just for 5 minutes at the beginning of your day that you don't open your inbox, because the default for many of us as we start our day, we open email, and then you're on this kind of runaway train of responding to what everybody else wants from you. So if you can start your day even 5 minutes by working on a project or a task that has high value for you, not only are you going to get something done, it's on your to-do list, but it's also going to create this feeling of relaxed control, which I think is really important in our frantic, very hectic, often very, very full packed days. So that's part one, is the suggestion not to start your day with email. But in order to really maximize that 5 minutes as you're trying to stay away from it, it gets to your other question, Caitlin, around daily planning. How do you do it, and when do you do it? And so I suggest, if possible, that you plan for the next day the night before or early in the beginning of the next day. And all you're doing during this process is getting really clear on your 1 to 3 tasks that you need to get done that day. And these are the high-value tasks and projects that are directly aligned to your goals and objectives. And they also have a due date potentially that you need to get them done by. And once you've decided what these 1 to 3 are, because the reality is most of you are in meetings, you have conference calls, so 1 to 3 is probably about all you're going to get done. You put those on a Post-it note so that you can anchor yourself visually. And Caitlin, this is important for you as a visualizer. So you can anchor yourself visually into your goals and objectives for the day. So when you open your computer the next day, your Post-it note is sitting there and you're ready to go. The last thing that I'll say, I'm going to circle back to the email piece. So not starting your day with email, doing your daily planning and getting really clear on those 1 to 3 top priorities the night before or early before you start your workday. The other thing I'll say about email is that, as you mentioned, Caitlin, we tend to just log in and we feel like all we do all day is just respond to email. So I would suggest that you respond to email, get it done, and then get out. Minimize the application, close it, and then do work on a project, return phone calls, then come back, open it again, read and process your emails, close it, and then come back. So that you're intentionally 3, 4, 5 times a day. I don't sit in anyone's seat out there, so I'm not sure what's right for you, but it varied yet somewhat specific intervals throughout the day, you're checking your email. You're not in it all day, and you're not constantly responding every time you get a new email notification.
So what you're saying is block off some time on your calendars to specifically check email, and as soon as that time is up, get out of there.
Yes, for some styles that would work really well, blocking time on their calendar. So prioritizers and planners will love that. My arrangers and visualizers, that's going to feel like you're in a straitjacket. So let's not set yourself up for failure. You're not going to like that system. It's just not going to work for you. So for you, it's don't block the time on your calendar. Just tell yourself, I'm going to work on email this morning for about 20 minutes. Set a timer on your phone. When the 20 minutes dings, you're out. Then at another interval that you decide, get back in, set the timer. When it dings, you're out. Don't block time if you're a visualizer or arranger. You're going to ignore it and not do it, so it's just going to be a waste of energy.
You sound like me, Carson.
You know that it doesn't work to use strategies that aren't aligned to the way we think and process. I mean, it really is like putting on a pair of clothes that just doesn't fit. It's uncomfortable, and you're not going to do it anyway. So why don't we choose the things that we know are going to work for us?
Well, question about the physical space and how we can use our physical spaces to enhance our productivity. You know, many of us sit at a desk all day. So what are a couple things that we can do in our desk area to help us increase our productivity? You know, whether it's like a timer by us to remind us about our time, or what are a couple things that we could do tomorrow when we go to work at our desks to be physical reminders about, you know, we need to increase our productivity?
Yes. So first of all, I want you to think back to kindergarten, which was years ago for you, many of you. It was even longer for me, trust me. But remember back to your kindergarten class, and when you went to the kindergarten class, everything had a place. You walked in, there was a station for art. There was a place where you read. There was a place for blocks. And you had everything that you needed to paint your picture at the art station. And when you were ready to read the book, the comfy beanbag chair and the book was there. So when we think about our desk, like the surface of our desk in our office, I want you to think about the kindergarten model, because we want to make sure that everything has a place and everything's in its place, and that you have areas or zones on your desk where you're completing certain types of tasks. And so all of the tools that you need to complete that task would be at your fingertips. So let's say, for example, I'm going to be checking email. Well, I need my computer, and I'm potentially going to time myself. So I'd either use a timer on my computer, or I'd use my phone, and my phone would be next to my computer. If I'm doing writing and research, I tend to use legal pads and pens. I make sure that there's a zone on my desk where I've got plenty of pens and pads. So it's really easy for me to access the tools that I need. So that what you do is you think about the types of work that you perform during the day, and then literally set up your desk. You don't need much space, but you literally set up your desk to support each type of work. I'm not a huge fan of having a bunch of file folders on your desk. I think that takes up really precious real estate. So figuring out another place to put them on the floor in a drawer, so that you have maximum surface area to work and you have maximum zones on your desk.
I have a question.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, I'm really curious to know, with everyone having different productivity styles, there's definitely that off chance that some people are either going to butt heads, or that there's going to be conflict because everyone has, you know, differences, but yet they have to come together at the end of the day and like put all of that aside, right? Do you have any suggestions, or are there any things like certain styles that just don't maybe work well together, or some tips and tricks to kind of bring all of that together when you have a collaborative field that you work in, or maybe even an open space?
Yeah, so Sarah, great couple of questions there. So I heard a few. Let me just check. So one, are there any styles that tend to clash more than others? And if so, what would you do to minimize those and to work a little bit, make working together easier? Is that accurate?
Yep, you got it.
Okay. All right. So first, yes, there are certain styles that tend to have more clashes than others, and it's just because their thinking is really, if we looked at a chart, they're diagonally across from each other, and it's just very, very diametrically opposed. So the prioritizer, that analytical, logical, that data-driven person, and the arranger, that kinesthetic, intuitive, communicative, team, relational-based person, they are definitely going to have some clashes. The prioritizer is going to ask them, just give me the facts. The arranger is going to think that that's cold, unfeeling, and you don't understand what's going on, and you don't care about me. And that is not true. It's just the way they're processing information. The arranger, it's that relational connection that's really important. For the prioritizer, it's that data and the facts that are really important. And the relational piece for them is something that in their mind tends to get in the way. And for the arranger, all of just the data and the facts, you're missing the human element, which is really important in getting work done. So prioritizer and arrangers tend to clash. And then the other two styles that tend to clash more than others would be the planner and the visualizer. Because the planner's thinking is characterized as being very organized and sequential. They're very planned. They like structure. And the visualizer is that big picture, intuitive thinker who really chafes at structure. They don't want project plans. They really don't want to have a lot of structure in their day and on the projects that they work. They prefer a little bit looser format. Well, the looseness stresses out the planner, and the structure stresses out the visualizer, and so then they clash over there's too much, there's too little. So this is inherent. I'm sure many of you have experienced these challenges. So what do you do about it? So how do you mitigate or minimize those clashes or those rubs that will come up? So I want you to think about addressing, when you're working with somebody, one of 4 questions. And if you don't know their style, you're going to use all 4. But if you do know their style, you're going to focus on that style's preferred question type. So the prioritizer is very focused on what questions. So what's the goal, what's the outcome, what's the data, what's the objective? So if I'm working with a prioritizer, I will always start my conversation with, Caroline, the goal today is so-and-so. Here's the data that I'm using to support the attainment of this goal. And here's some additional research I did on this problem that we might experience. So I'm going to be very factual, I'm going to be very brief and very concise and really focus on those what questions. If you're working with a planner, the planner's interested in the how questions. How has the project been done in the past? How do you want me to complete the project? How did another department do it? Are there any rules or regulations for us to follow? So if I'm working with a planner, then I'm going to lead with the how questions. So, Jacqueline, the new project that we're working on, I would like for you to prepare a 10-page PowerPoint deck with graphics only, no words. I need it by next Tuesday at 10 p.m. Very, very succinct for them as well, but I'm focused more on the structure and the how part of the project. Then if you're working with the arranger is really focused on the who question. These are your people. So they're interested in knowing who are the key stakeholders. Who else needs to know this information? Who does know this information? Who ultimately is going to be impacted by this project or this information? So if I'm working with an arranger, my communication, and let me say this is communication face-to-face, over the phone, email, IM, text. Any way you communicate with folks, you're leading with these questions. So with my arranger on the who, I'm going to lead with the who questions. So Jacqueline, we're working on this project with Sue and Bill and Bob. The end user is going to be the IT department. Your contact over there is Greg. We want to make sure that everyone is kept in the loop, so please CC everyone on the project team going forward. So I'm leading with that who information. And then the last one for the visualizer's questions are focused on the why. Why are we doing the project? Why can't we do this? Why haven't we tried this? They're asking those big picture kind of context questions. So if I'm working with a visualizer, I'm always going to lead with the why questions in my communications. So let's see, Meg, we are going to rebrand our Twitter account because the book just launched, and we want to make sure that everyone knows that the book is out. And this is part of our strategy in first quarter to really drive the knowledge and the awareness of the book. I'm providing her the context, the big picture, with a framework before I move into the details. Now, if you don't know their style, just make sure you answer the what, the how, the who, and the why in every conversation that you're in, and every email, and you will be very clear in your communication, and that person will also feel like you've really heard them. So I know we've got some folks who are live. Does that make sense, or do you need more information on that? Because this is definitely something, I think, professionally that comes up in our careers, and as we continue to advance, really the working well with others and leading others is absolutely essential.
And that makes perfect sense, and it's great. I'll have to start using that method.
Great. Jacqueline, what's your style? Do you know? Did you take the assessment?
I'm a planner.
Oh, Jacqueline.
I'm a planner too.
Oh, great. So
I'm a prioritizer, and I love hearing how you described how to communicate with each person, because in our immediate team at Mouse and Man, where Caitlin and I and Morgan also work, it's kind of fun, like thinking about how, who is what and how we should communicate. And I feel like we've done that without knowing the steps, and now that we know them, I feel like it'll be like printed in our brains, like, who needs the what and who needs the why. I definitely need the what. I am very detailed and fact-based, as they can tell you.
I'm the same way. I'm a prioritizer as well, so I understand that completely.
Well, and don't forget with our prioritizer colleagues, it's short, fast, and succinct. So if you send them an email that's 4 paragraphs long, their eyes are glazing over and they're probably not going to read it. So you want to communicate with a prioritizer, a sentence or just a few letters will do.
Oh my gosh, I can just see it now.
You want to communicate with folks in a way that they understand. And this, when I was talking about in your career leaning in and really leveraging your strengths of your productivity style, this is where you shine. So Jacqueline is the planner. She's raising her hand to put together that project plan. She's raising her hand to organize the data. She's coming to the meetings prepared with an agenda, a timed agenda, because she excels at it, and she helps everybody else stay on track. It's very easy for her. It's very natural for her, but it's also an opportunity for her to continuously showcase where she's adding tremendous value to the organization. And so that's my challenge for each of you, is to know your style, embrace it, and then let it shine. Absolutely let it shine, and don't make any apologies because you might do things slightly differently than your colleagues. That's fantastic, because we need all 4 styles on any team and in any organization to work really well. And each style has these wonderful strengths that when combined, it's a really powerful team.
Carson, we have a question from the audience here.
Oh, great.
Morgan Corbett wants to know if there is a blend of styles.
Morgan, great question. So the way I think about productivity style is I think about it almost like I think about whether you're right or left-handed. So almost all of us are born with two hands, a right hand and a left hand, and we have a preference. So I prefer to write with my right hand. My significant other is left-handed, and he likes to write with his left hand. Now, Andrew, my significant other, can write with his right hand, and I can write with my left hand, but I prefer to write with my right hand. So your productivity style is that preference. It's like your handedness. It's where you're most comfortable. It's where you're the strongest. But absolutely you're a blend of the other three styles because you're whole-brained. And there you have all of them in you, and you will use and lean into them, but you're always going to come back to your preference. So I might write something with my left hand just because I'm multitasking, doing something with my right, but I'm always going to come back to the right hand. If I have to write a long document, or when I pick up a pen, I pick it up in my right hand. So great question.
Carson, I have a question as well. Are these these types, are they gender neutral as well? I mean, can they be applied to men as well as women?
Absolutely, yes. Great question. They are gender neutral. So you will see men in each of these four styles. And I'd also say from an age perspective, the youngest person that I've had take it is 18, and the oldest was 75. And so there really isn't a difference in age either. So gender neutral, doesn't matter how old you are. Everybody's got a style, and it's just leaning into that preferred productivity style.
So it doesn't change?
That's a good question. So does your style change? So your style does not change. The strength of your preference can increase or decrease depending on if you have a significant life event. So I have seen people's preferences change when they change careers. I've seen people's preferences change when they enter into new relationships, pretty significant relationships. I've also seen people when they're under extreme stress, personally or professionally, the strength of their preference might change slightly, or they might migrate more to their secondary preference. So you take the assessment, you score yourself, and the numerical values, the one that's the highest is your preferred or primary, and then the one that has the second highest score is your secondary. And sometimes under stress you might default to that secondary style more than you would that primary style. Good question.
I have a question about, you've asked us how our style fits us, but what about understanding the people around you and the styles that they might have? What's the best way to get their style other than taking the assessment? Are there any cues that you might get from people based on some of the suggestions you were talking about earlier?
Right, because we can't run around with a link to an assessment and say, oh, I just met you. Will you please take this quiz for me? That's the ultimate turnoff, and that's definitely not going to work. That's not politically correct. So there are definitely clues and cues. That's what I call them for each of the styles. So let's start with something fun. Let's start with clothing. Because your style, what's great about your productivity style is it shows up in the way you communicate, in the way you think, in the way you organize your desk, in the way you process information, and the clothes that you wear. So a prioritizer, they're going to tend to dress in a darker colors. It's going to tend to be a little bit more conservative, a little more neutral, and pretty practical. You're not going to see a bright Hawaiian shirt on a prioritizer. If you do, someone made them do it for a dare. It's probably not likely. So pretty traditional conservative. A planner. A planner is the one who wears very functional clothes. They might love their really cool, sexy heels, but they reserve those for the nights when they go out and they know they're going to be sitting for a significant portion of the night because they're very uncomfortable. They tend to be darker, more muted colors as well, more conservative, kind of traditional. The arranger is colorful. So they're the ones that tend to wear more color. I know we have someone with us in New York. Even in New York, an arranger is going to show some color somewhere. It might be a scarf, it might be a handbag. They're also interested in texture. So the clothing will feel very warm, very fuzzy, and you'll notice patterns. And they might tell you that they like the way something feels. And then the visualizer is the person who looks like they just stepped out of the pages of a fashion magazine. They're cutting edge. They've always got the latest trend and style, cool hair. Their makeup looks awesome. They're really kind of pushing the envelope around what's next. So that's kind of the fun, fluffy stuff. So what's more practical and tactical when it comes to clues and cues? So we already talked about a really basic foundational one, the questions. The prioritizer is going to ask you those questions. So just notice. They're going to ask you, what's the goal, what's the outcome, what's the objective? The planner's asking you, how do you want it done? How's it been done in the past? The arranger's asking the who questions. Who else needs to be involved? And the visualizer is asking those why questions. Then you can also look at the way they structure their email messages. So prioritizers, it's really short. They don't say, Dear Caitlin. They don't say, how was your weekend? They just jump right into the whole point. And it's usually one sentence. There's no closing, no salutation. The planner, you get a little bit more information, but frequently their email has bullet points or numbers and tells you a due date and exactly what to do. The arranger opens with, hi, how are you? How was your weekend? What's going on with so-and-so? Then there's a paragraph around the work, and then there's a nice closing. The visualizer is all over the place. Long paragraphs, lots of different topics in an email. So they're just kind of running on, kind of rambling on a stream of conscious. So notice the types of emails that you get as well. And then look at the tools that your folks tend to use. The arrangers, visualizers tend to favor more visual, colorful, kinesthetic tools. The prioritizer and the planner tend to be more linear and analytical. So the prioritizer and the planner, they're using Excel, they're using MS Project and Outlook. The arranger and the visualizer are using mind maps and whiteboards and Post-it notes. So we all give off clues and cues to our style. And if all else fails, you can always say, would you be willing to take this assessment? Maybe.
Oh, that's a great point, Carson. I was just laughing with Morgan, who's sitting beside me. So we're laughing because our styles are very complementary of each other, but they're very similar as well. So you're talking about the blends. And she said, between you and I, we're just kind of like, la-di-da-di-da. We are the ramblers in the emails that we drive Cassie.
Right. Well, I think that personal awareness helps, and then being able to discern from your colleagues their style as well, so that you can present information and your projects back to them in a way that really resonates, and then have that conversation around how you can meet in the middle and really leverage their strengths while leveraging yours as well.
I think that's where it comes down to expectations. You've mentioned that to me a million times, is just tell people how you want them to treat you, or they're going to do whatever they want to do.
Right. We teach people how to treat us. So what have you taught them that works, and what have you taught them that is no longer serving you, so that you might want to retrain folks? So, Caitlin, I had in here maybe just to talk about a couple of practical strategies around managing your time. Does that sound like something that folks might want me to touch on?
Absolutely, Carson. Take it away.
Okay. So we'll do it. I'll just do some broad strategies, and I'll cover a couple that will appeal to every style. So when I'm thinking about your time and ways to maximize your time, the first one would be to batch, group, like task. So you're batching or grouping like task. So what that means is you do all your phone calls together. You do all your emails together. If you're doing any writing or researching, you would do all that together. So what we're eliminating is that switching between very different tasks, and we're organizing and structuring our days and our to-do list based on similar types of activities. It allows us to really get in that flow. The second strategy would be to work in vacation mode. So think about what happens before you go on vacation. So your inbox is cleaned out, your desk, you can see the surface of it, projects are tight, you know where you stand, everything's pulled together. And the reason that that's the case is because you have a hard deadline. You're going to be on the beach or doing whatever you love to do on Saturday morning. You're not going to be working. And so for many of us, we will just say, oh, I'm going to work late tonight, I'm going to work early in the morning. Don't do it. Have a hard deadline when you're going to stop, because you will naturally be more efficient and effective throughout the day. So work in vacation mode. And if it's hard for you, schedule something fun. Make sure you have drinks scheduled with a girlfriend, or you're going to a movie. There's a hard stop, and you can't work past it. The other strategy is to intersperse boring work with more interesting work. So I don't know about you guys, but I definitely have tasks that are really boring and I don't really like to do. And so if you can work on those tasks, stop, and then switch into something that's more energizing, more engaging, more intellectually stimulating, you're going to be more efficient throughout your day. So it's this oscillation between boring, interesting, that really keeps your productivity up pretty high. And then two more suggestions for you. Follow Nike and just do it. So if an email comes in and you can respond to it quickly, and quickly being 2 to 3 minutes, just do it. Because the time it's going to take for you to reread and redecide and do it all over again, it's just wasted time. Wasted time. So just do it. Do the work you can quickly and move it off your desk. And then the last one is just be really real about how you work and how your energy flows throughout the day. So some of you really do your best work in the morning, some of you do your best work at midnight, some of you have an afternoon slump and just need to kind of chill. Align your work to the way that your body and your energy level are moving, and you'll be so much more productive. And if you're tired, hungry, or pissed off, you're not going to be productive. So eat, take a walk, close your eyes for 2 minutes, listen to your favorite song and jump up and down to move some energy, and then come back and re-engage. If you don't, you're fighting a losing battle, because your brain and your body, unfortunately, always win.
Does anybody on the live chat have any other questions for Carson? Does anybody in the audience have any good questions? I don't think we have any questions at this point, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. I would like to remind everybody that the productivity assessment is on lavo.com. It's on the Charlotte event page. I also believe Atlanta has a page, and then you can also find it in my blog. One thing that helps a lot of people figure out a good starting point for their time management is to complete this productivity assessment. So Carson is making it available to all of our participants today, and if you haven't taken it, it's available. You can also find information about our previous events on lavo.com, and you can also follow us on any social media platform at hashtag #LocalLevoCLT. You can also follow our international chapter at Levo League, LEVOLEAGUE. Thank you, Carson, for sharing your knowledge. Big thanks to all of the Levo panelists who joined us tonight. And thank you guys for spending time with us. Our next event is in Plaza Midwood, and Local Levo Charlotte is hosting Colleen Castle for a communication-focused workshop. Again, find more details on levo.com. Thanks again, and have a great night.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks everybody.
Carson.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.